Mariannette Miller-Meeks from the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus. Okay, Congresswoman, I would like you to hear these sound bites from Dr. Fauci. This is about the new Omicron strain, the BA.2 variant. It's more transmissible. It doesn't appear to cause more serious illnesses. Watch Dr. Fauci. It looks like he's confusing and flip-flopping again. Listen to this.
We need to be flexible. And if, in fact, we do see a turnaround and a resurgence, we have to be able to pivot and go back to any degree of mitigation that is commensurate with what the situation is. So we can't just say we're done. Now we're going to move on.
We've seen this relaxation of restrictions all across the country right now. Any reason to reverse that?
I don't think so, George. Not right now. I don't see us going back into any more really very strict kinds of restrictions. But you always have to have the flexibility.
Okay, first he's saying we might have to go back into restrictions, Congresswoman. But then he's saying he doesn't see that we may need to do that. Do you see how that's confusing?
I think Dr. Fauci has been confusing for the past 2 years. You know, first masks don't work, then we should all wear masks. So there's been a continual confusion and a lack of transparency among NIH and among the CDC, which is why people have questions.
You know, so why not stick to one line, saying it is more infectious, it doesn't cause severe illness, we may not need to go into lockdowns again. Now he's raising the specters of lockdowns that destroyed the country. It ruined America. It was the most ill-conceived thing we've ever seen to hit this country in generations. How we let these local bureaucrats decide to shut down a dry cleaner or a shoe store, a shoe repair shop that would have nothing to do with making the pandemic worse.
That's a point I've tried to make continually in Congress, is that this should not be the precedent for how we try to mitigate other pandemics which will come in the future. He's been very confusing. The CDC has been confusing. We need to have a risk-benefit strategy. So what's the risk of disease? What's the risk of spread of disease or transmission? And then based upon that, we then determine what mitigation efforts we want to have. So I don't think we're going to have to go down to lockdowns. Remember what happened when Omicron first came up. We already knew from South Africa, we knew from Great Britain that it was highly contagious, it was transmissible, but you didn't get ill and you didn't get sick. So for those places that went back down into lockdowns and to vaccine passports and to mask mandates, they went overboard. But if we would have looked at all of the information that was coming out of other countries, we would have known that it was very mild. Most people didn't get ill. And just like the Delta variant, even if you were vaccinated and boosted, you could still transmit. And so the CDC still doesn't acknowledge infection-acquired immunity or natural immunity.
You know, we hear you. Enough with the lockdowns. Never do it again. It was the worst, dumbest, and most insane decision ever to do that to this country and to do it to businesses across the country. And where everybody's paying for it now. How did they set aside
the costs were enormous.
Yeah, the WHO even said 1918 flu pandemic. We do not lock down. We didn't do it in a full scale like that. You shut down, you know, concerts or church events, mass gatherings, not little businesses. And now Dr. Fauci is throwing cold water on retirement, saying he wants to stay until we're really out of the pandemic. So we're going to continue to be confused by Dr. Fauci. And the CDC, by the way, Congresswoman, corrected downward. They had overstated the number of pediatric deaths by about 25%. So we're not operating with the best information going forward.
Which is why people are confused and which is why people resist the recommendations. So they need to be transparent on data and information. And you're correct. We should not lock down again. The cost of the lockdowns was significant in the cost of life, in the cost of businesses, in the cost of poverty, educational loss. I mean, it has a tremendous cost that well outweighed those who we could protect. We can protect those who are most vulnerable and also allow us to be able to live with this virus. And that's what we should do going forward.
Congresswoman, it's great to have you back on. Come back again soon. Congresswoman Mariannette Miller-Meeks.